Now I will have a much more substantial video coming out hopefully soon, but since I'm going on a trip this Thursday, I thought I would leave you all with something incredibly stupid with just a smidgen of my actual honest opinions. Assuming you can read, you already know that this video is all about a few gods in Warhammer that I think are better than the Emperor at being a god. If you can read and just randomly clicked until you reach this video, then please rewind so you can hear the previous sentence again until you know what this video is about. There's two things I'd like to preface this with before we start. One, this video is about gods from both 40k and fantasy, so deities like Ulrich and Hashut are still in the running to be discussed. Two, better doesn't mean stronger necessarily. Better just means that, in my opinion, these gods are better at being gods than Big E is. Not more powerful, because for example, if the Emperor fought the god Ranald from fantasy, Ranald would get his head shoved so far up his rear he could smell his brain matter. To avoid people dwelling on that sentence for too long, let's get started. And indeed, let's start with the big guns. Sigmar. I probably could have saved this for its own video, but oh well, what are you gonna do? Sigmar as a god isn't just better than the Emperor, he's better in pretty much every regard except perhaps raw power. And even that being said, while the Chaos Gods are afraid of the Emperor, Sigmar has been stated in AOS to be one of the first gods capable of challenging the Chaos Gods. But to avoid the entire comment section filling with people arguing about strength, let's move on to how he's better as a deity. Sigmar actually gives a damn about his followers as people. He's not like the Emperor where he loves humanity but views individuals as at best expendable resources. He actually acknowledges that people are, well, people and more than just pawns on a chessboard. While he's done and supported some pretty awful things ever since becoming a god, I mean witch hunters aren't exactly nice people, he still understands that people have wants and needs to consider. Hell, even though he's taken to the part of God King pretty well, he's still a human turned god who comes from a tribe of barbarians. He likes to hit things with his big hammer and be done with the problem. He's a passionate being from a passionate group of people. He not only actually cares about people as people, but shows emotion, and as a god he's definitely better off for it. Also, unlike the Emperor, he doesn't do all sorts of cryptic and irritating bullshit in the name of furthering his cause. For instance, the Emperor refusing to inform anyone about the knowledge of chaos, including the Primarchs. Let's ignore the fact that they're his sons for a bit. The Primarchs were his top generals. Not a single other person held authority over them aside from himself, Malcador, and perhaps Constantine Valdor. If there was anyone who should have known about chaos, it was them. And yet because of his obsession with controlling everything to a fault and his inability to trust others, half of them decide that selling their souls to hell was a good idea. Sure, some of them were too curious for their own good, and maybe telling them about chaos might have led to complications, looking at you, Magnus. But there should have been some education on the matter, some kind of happy middle ground. Meanwhile, let's look at Sigmar. You know what he does? He says chaos bad, don't listen to the head voices, apply hammer to skull. Heresy still occurs, but not nearly as catastrophic amongst his own followers as the Emperor's, except for Archaon being a follower of his once and then turning to chaos and ending the world, but I chalk that up to bad writing, because no amount of divine power was going to stop GW from axing fantasy, because money. Relatedly, the matter of trust. Sigmar trusts his followers to be capable people without him hovering over their heads. If Big E wasn't still chained to his golden couch, I would bet out my ass that there wouldn't be nearly as many people like the Sisters of Battle and their faith abilities or the Imperial Saints. Meanwhile, Sigmar regularly empowers people worthy of it to get out there and kill bad guys. The Stormcast Eternals are given their power and then told to just get out there and start swinging. Sigmar can actually trust others to succeed on their own power and doesn't just assume he's the only one in reality who can possibly do anything right. Instead of throwing the advice and warnings of other races out, he listens to them and sees what they have to say. He gave the Celestin Prime Galmarez willingly, and not just because he's a rotting skeleton and can't use it anymore like the Emperor and Guilliman. Sigmar also acknowledges he's a god. Ever since he ascended he has. There's no stupid denial game where he's all, I am not a god despite wearing religious iconography and glowing gold and having a halo. Please excuse the smell, that's just the stench of hypocrisy that emanates off me 24/7. Sigmar knows he is and accepts it, and most importantly in terms of proving he's better, has never raised the city of his followers for calling him one. And of course, two more important things to mention. One, lighting is much cooler than non-specific glowing holy light. I mean, what looks sicker, Thor arriving to battle in a thunderstorm, or Saint Celestine just kind of floating down with a mediocre Raves light show? Come on now, the answer is obvious here. The Emperor's forces dress like they're late for the most LARPy Catholic Mass on the planet. Sigmar's followers look like they belong on a power metal album. Most importantly, however, is this. Sigmar can count amongst his supporters who else but Karl Franz. I rest my case, ladies and gentlemen. That's all there is to it. I could have just said that and skipped on to the next god. Now that comparison had a bit too many serious things in it for my liking, so how about we move on to the next god? How about Nagash, another fantasy one. Now you might look at me and go, what the fuck is wrong with you? And I admit, in a lot of ways, Nagash is worse. He's almost certainly weaker, and even with the low standards of the Emperor, he is not at all benevolent. But with that being said, there's a few ways he outdoes Ol Impi. For example, the amount of control he has over his followers. Nagash has almost complete control over those who can be considered his followers. Hell, beyond that, he has control over other gods' followers. Did you die? Congrats, you now belong to Nagash. Even the Stormcast, who are inherently connected to Sigmar, get a bit of their soul gnawed by him before Sigmar can grab it. And he's Sigmar. Vampires, or whatever stupid name they have now, Soulblight copyright lords, they pay fealty to him. Don't have a choice in the matter, in fact. He is the supreme commander of the entire Death faction. Yes, theoretically the Emperor is too, but for the most part he's a bit more hands-off. And it sure is a lot harder for a vampire to rebel against Nagash than an Imperial Guardsman regiment to rebel against the Emperor. Nagash, meanwhile, is very hands-on, as in he's going to put his hands on your throat and light your head on fire if you don't listen to him. He did almost that exact thing once, by the way, in Warhammer Fantasy, except it was with telekinesis instead, because Nagash wouldn't actually sully his hands with such inferior trash as a rebellious vampire. Also, Nagash has much better quotes, like, it's not even close. The speech the Emperor gives about the Space Marines and how they shall know no fear is awesome. I will give him credit. But Nagash hits you up with "such is the power of Nagash" after an entire paragraph of him explaining how easy it is for him to kill you and eat your soul. That shit's cold. That's so raw, Gordon Ramsay takes issue with it. Additionally, while both of them are full of themselves, with Nagash it's just fun and hilarious. The Emperor's just kind of pathetic how little he can conceive of his way not being the right way. He's so arrogant and annoying with it, like when he explains how he's different from religious tyrants in the past because he knows he is right. How does he know he's right? Because he's different. How is he different? He knows he is right. Flawless argument there, asshole. Meanwhile, Nagash is the kind of person to say, "Such is the power of Nagash." He's not just condescending about it, he's an asshole about it, and that's so much more fun. He knows he's basically a god, and as if AOS is a god, and he's gonna make damn sure everyone around him knows. Never admitting defeat despite blatantly losing on the regular, always doing the same exact thing because it's really cool to build big magical pyramids. Plus, the Emperor punishes people for stupid reasons, like when they get the mad idea in their head of thinking he's a god just because he has the power of one as well as acts and dresses like one. Or when they practice magic despite the fact he created them with the sole purpose of being really good at magic. Nagash, on the other hand, punishes you for doing things like healing people, not worshipping Nagash, not being dead yet, or worst of all, doing all three of those things. The list goes on, and it's a list of him being a douchebag, but in a way that just owns his cartoon villain status. They're both stupid, arrogant dickheads, but Nagash does it in a way that you just can't help but applaud. And lastly, before moving on, his drip. Just look at Nagash. He is the Skelepope Supreme. He's got the spooky supernatural ghost cloud energy trails trailing around him. He's surrounded by the souls of the damned. Same as Sigmar, his fit is immaculate and far better than the Emperor's. Once again, we've got generic golden holy whatever glow, or a horde of ghosts kept in eternal torment constantly surrounding you for no better reason than they mildly annoyed you and they need to suffer for it. For the next one, how about Gork and Mork, because I need to put out something orc related this month. Gorka Morka also counts here because, let's be honest with ourselves, he's the same goddamn thing. A simple pair of gods these are, as you probably know. One is brutal yet cunning, and the other cunning yet brutal. You know what they ask of their followers? Not maintaining a constant vigilance against the forces of chaos or insidious Xenos, no ever-present need for security and other stuff like that, no services to attend, nothing. You just gotta be able to beat the shit out of someone at a moment's notice. That's it. And you don't even need to be doing it 24/7. Orcs and goblins have free time to muck about, and orcs like mech boys show that other things can in fact be parts of old culture than just wanton violence. Also, the Emperor doesn't regularly interact with his followers to near the same amount as Gork and Mork do. Gork and Mork can do it through mystic voices in your head, they can do it through orc shamans and whatnot, or they do it when a big green foot comes down from the sky and smashes someone flat. Yeah, there's instances like with Guilliman getting revived by Big E against Mortarion, but those are few and far between. The green lads, meanwhile, are always happy to throw down at a moment's notice. They're very supportive gods, but in a way that lets the boys grow on their own. If you ask for help fighting, they won't give it to you, but if they see you're putting into work, then they'll throw you a bone by throwing something big at your enemies, or again, just stepping on them. Honestly, find it kind of strange that no other god in Warhammer has yet to realize the effectiveness of just kicking your enemy's followers to death on the field of battle. Gork and Mork are also just, you know, fun guys. Shit pun from the mushroom gods, I know, but it still stands. Let's get one more god in here, just so I don't take up too much of your time. The last deity who's a better god than the Emperor is, drumroll please, just imagine the sound of a drumroll in your head right now, please and thank you, Goku Drip. Just kidding, it's actually corn. Now, as you know, I hate corn. I really, really do. But in all fairness towards him, he's kind of pretty good at being a god. Admittedly, he doesn't really get off the couch either, but come on. When comparing him to the Emperor, that's just putting them on equal footing. As for how he's better, let's go over a couple of ways. For one, much like Gork and Mork, he's very meritocratic. With Khorne, there's nothing like the Imperial governors amongst his followers, where they get power through the time-tested methods of killing all the family members they can and then sleeping with the rest. If you can't kill, you can't get Khorne's favor. Don't be a pussy. But that being said, if you do get Khorne's favor, you're getting buffed to hell and back. Plus, Khorne is much more lenient with the methods he allows his followers to use to achieve his purpose of getting blood and skulls. With the Emperor, you gotta make sure you pray the right way and all that jazz that makes people fall asleep in mass. Very boring, not fun, too rigid. Meanwhile, Khorne lets you go nuts. Sure, you could just chop people's heads off the old-fashioned way, but hear me out on this one. Theoretically, Khorne would love having a scientist follower. Because yes, while you can't cut someone's head off with a thermonuclear warhead you invented, that's such a scale of violence that he doesn't give a shit. That's such a massive amount of souls coming his way all because of you that he doesn't really care their skulls have been atomized. Plus, Khorne has actual supernatural servants that regularly make an appearance. I know the Emperor has Imperial saints in that army of the dead he's building up, like with Ferrus Manus, but there's not exactly a surplus of Saint Celestines, and that Ghost Army thing hasn't really done anything yet. Switching back over to Khorne, you got billions of demons going out to get blood in the Blood God's name. So while I do like the Emperor more than Khorne, as a god I think Khorne's doing a better job. That sentence hurts me to say. That's about all for now. I might make another one of these in the future with more gods, because talking about how much the Emperor sucks is fun, and this is just a fun little video I came up with while working on something actually substantial. This is probably the last proper video up before I go on vacation for a weekend, but who the fuck knows? Maybe I just won't sleep and pound out another. In either case, however, thank you to my wonderful channel members. You are the psyker to my Emperor, giving your life to keep me going despite the fact that I'm kind of a shitheel. If you'd like to support the channel, feel free to subscribe or become a member. Either way, thank you for watching, and take care out there. Wait, there was one final god I'd like to mention. Or should I say goddess, Morathi. Is she stronger than the Emperor? No. Is she wiser, or does she treat her followers better than him? Not really. She not only accidentally helps Slaanesh get a little bit closer to being freed, but bold-facedly lies to all of her followers so she could become a god. So why am I putting her on a list of gods that are better than the Emperor? It's the smut. I'll just be honest, and you probably saw this coming. Snake Mommy does things to me that are best left unaddressed outside a therapist and or a psych ward. That's why she's up here.